Ella survived when her sister slammed her through a glass door, but the coma that followed became the strangest kind of witness, because unconsciousness never truly silenced her. It just hid her, letting her absorb every confession the people around her thought she'd never hear. My sister shoved me through a glass panel in a fit of pure rage. I never even had a chance to raise my arms in defense. All I registered was the sudden twist in her expression, some emotion I still cannot properly name. Right before the door exploded behind me, and I understood, with sickening clarity, that I was falling. Everything turned blinding white, then crimson, then swallowed itself into total blackness. That fall put me into a coma, but stillness isn't the same as emptiness. It absorbs. It gathers up every whispered truth people release when they assume you're beyond hearing. And while I lay there, sealed inside a body that wouldn't respond, I uncovered a secret about my own family that made the shattered glass feel almost insignificant compared to what else had cracked that day. I wish I could say the broken door marked the start of everything, but it didn't. My name is Ella, and inside my childhood home, staying silent was the only form of protection I ever mastered. From the outside, we resembled every other suburban family, complete with framed school portraits lining the hall and the comforting drone of a dishwasher running after supper. But beneath that surface, our entire household orbited around my sister Natalie. She was the daughter our parents celebrated, shielded, forgave without question. I was the one who learned to move carefully, speak in a hushed voice, and vanish whenever the atmosphere between us shifted. Natalie had 3 years on me, and the height that came from seasons of volleyball training, the sort of presence that drew attention without even trying. I grew up trailing behind her like a shadow, smaller, quieter, forever anticipating the instant her composure would crack. And it cracked constantly. She never required a real reason. My breathing could be too audible, and that alone might trigger her. Responding to a question while guests were present could ignite that icy look in her eyes. Our mother always reached for the same phrase to calm her down. "You're still our special girl. Ella's just here." I understood early that being here never meant I truly belonged. It meant I was background static. The moment I first grasped how deeply broken things were, I was 12 years old. I overheard Natalie murmuring to our mother in the kitchen, unaware I was within earshot. "Why did you even have her?" Mum didn't flinch or push back. She simply exhaled and smoothed Natalie's hair as though she were the injured party. Across the years, our home filled with countless moments like that one, moments I quietly stored away, moments I convinced myself were meaningless. Except they weren't. They molded every choice I made, every apology I offered, even when I'd done nothing wrong. Micah, the boy who lived next door, was the only person who ever picked up on it. We grew up side by side, scaling backyard fences and swapping homework answers. He noticed the way I recoiled at a slammed door. He saw the bruises hidden beneath long sleeves, but even he didn't know the full extent. Not yet. As the years passed, the tension inside our house sharpened, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. Natalie's temper, once merely unpredictable, began turning genuinely dangerous. And the unsettling truth was that everyone in that house sensed it. They simply chose to look away. I used to believe that if I made myself small enough, cautious enough, silent enough, the chaos might stay contained. I had no idea the catastrophe brewing at the end of that hallway had been years in the making. If there was a single turning point where everything truly began sliding, it was the year Natalie started falling behind. Not dramatically, not overnight, but through a slow unraveling she refused to acknowledge. Volleyball had always been her defining achievement. Colleges recruited her for summer camps, coaches spoke highly of her, and neighbors bragged about her like she was the pride of the entire town. But her junior year hit differently. A twisted ankle, a rising teammate who began outperforming her, a string of disappointing matches. And Natalie's disappointment always needed a target. That target became me. That same spring, I earned a spot in a competitive arts program downtown. I remember clutching the acceptance letter, my hands trembling with a feeling I hadn't experienced in ages, genuine pride. Mum barely glanced up from her mug. Dad offered a distracted, "That's nice, honey." But when Natalie entered the room, everything stopped. "She got in," Mum announced, like she was admitting to wrongdoing. Natalie's jaw locked. "Into that program by the athletic centre?" "Yes," I replied softly. "So now she has to invade my space too." I tried explaining that our classes would be held in completely separate buildings, but reasoning meant nothing once she felt cornered. The slap landed before I even registered her arm moving, just the sting, the blur, the room falling silent. Mum never asked what happened. She simply murmured, "Natalie's under a lot of pressure, Ella. Don't provoke her." Pressure became the excuse my parents hid behind for everything. Every push, every mark left on my skin, every door slammed inches from my face. Pressure explained Natalie's fury, and somehow it was always my failure for not absorbing it better. Micah found me outside the next morning, a bruise already darkening across my cheek. "This wasn't an accident," he said. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. "Ella, you have to start keeping records. Photos, dates, everything. I mean it." I told him my parents wouldn't believe me, even with proof in hand. "That's not who this is for," he said quietly. "It's for you. For the day she finally goes too far." Part of me wanted to laugh. Natalie had already crossed more lines than I could count, but a buried part of me knew he was right. So I began writing things down, snapping photos, hiding a journal at his house. The more evidence I collected, the more obvious the pattern became. Natalie wasn't spiraling, she was building towards something, and our house felt like it was shrinking daily, the walls inching closer, waiting for her rage to finally reach its breaking point. The day everything finally surfaced didn't announce itself as a disaster. It began quietly, almost too quietly. Natalie had spent the entire morning pacing, her steps striking hard against the wooden floors. Her mood hung over the house like a storm you could sense before it hit. I stayed locked in my room, headphones on, finishing a digital piece for my class exhibition, pretending the rest of the world didn't exist. But pretending never lasts. That afternoon, I stepped out for water and heard something tear violently. I rushed back to find Natalie hovering over my desk, breathing hard, my artwork ripped to pieces in her hands. Scraps of paper covered the floor like confetti from a celebration I hadn't been invited to. "What are you doing?" My voice cracked, thin and small. She showed no remorse. "You think you get some big moment tomorrow? Your little art show?" She scoffed. "I'm not letting you strut in there like you matter." I stepped forward on instinct, but the expression she gave me froze me in place, wild, unstable, the kind of look that precedes something awful. "Mom! Dad!" I called out. They appeared annoyed rather than concerned. Natalie pointed at the destroyed artwork. "She started this." I stared at her in disbelief. Mum pressed her fingers to her temples. "Ella, you know your sister has a lot on her plate. Why push her buttons?" Pressure, always pressure, as though my sole purpose was to soften her blows. That evening, Micah came by to help his father with something in their garage. When I stepped outside for fresh air, he took one look at my face, a tired, heartbroken glance, and didn't even ask. "Show me," he said. I led him inside, and once he saw the wreckage, he let out a slow breath, his jaw tightening. "This isn't just slipping anymore," he said. "This is escalating." "I know." The words felt heavy, metallic. He knelt beside the mess. "Ella, listen. You can't keep waiting for someone else to rescue you. Your parents have already shown they won't step in. You need a real plan." A plan. The word felt unfamiliar but grounding. That night I gathered everything. My journal, the photographs, the dates, every shove, every bruise she'd denied, every warning sign my parents had brushed aside. I sealed it all inside a box and carried it across the yard to Micah's house, handing it to him like proof of something I'd survived but never fully named. "Keep this here," I told him. "Ella, what exactly are you preparing for?" The truth escaped before I could stop it. For the day she finally crosses a line I can't come back from. He didn't argue. He didn't try to comfort me with false reassurance. The silence between us said everything words couldn't. Back home, the house felt altered, heavier, humming with tension. Natalie's footsteps echoed overhead in a rhythm I'd learned to dread, hunting for someone to blame. And somewhere inside me, a quiet realization sparked to life. I was no longer just documenting fear. I was preparing to survive. Not long after, the universe delivered its answer with brutal precision. A door slammed, a voice rose, my name spat out like an accusation. And then came the instant everything shattered, quite literally. It happened on a Thursday afternoon, golden light pouring through the upstairs hallway as though the house itself was trying to appear innocent. I remember thinking, for one strange moment, that it felt peaceful. Too peaceful. I'd just finished pressing the dress I planned to wear to my showcase, the first time my artwork would be seen publicly, the first time anyone outside school would witness what I could create. I wanted that night to matter, but Natalie couldn't bear the thought of me having something she didn't. I heard her door slam shortly after the mail arrived. She must have opened another rejection letter. The air turned sharp, charged, and every instinct in me went on alert. I gathered my things, planning to retreat downstairs until she calmed down, but I wasn't quick enough. "Ella!" My name tore through the hallway. Her footsteps thundered, fast, deliberate. I spun around, my heart stumbling. She was already storming toward me, her face mottled with fury, a crumpled letter clenched in her fist. "You think this is funny?" she snapped. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you don't. You never do. You just drift around wrecking everything." I stepped backward. She matched me step for step. "Nat, not today, please. I need to leave soon." "Oh, I know," she hissed. "Your big special night, everyone praising you, everyone watching you." I didn't react, knowing any hint of fear would only feed her rage. But when she grabbed my shoulder and yanked me toward her, something inside me finally gave way. Not resistance, not anger, just a cold, settled understanding. She wasn't going to stop. Not that day. Not ever. "Let go," I said calmly. She didn't. Instead, she shoved me. I stumbled backward, slamming into the wall. The framed family photo beside me rattled, the last Christmas we'd pretended to be whole. "You always take from me," she said, her breath uneven. "Every time I fail, all anyone sees is you succeeding. You make me look weak. I'm not responsible for shut up." She lunged, I dodged. She caught my wrist and twisted it, a sharp burning pain shooting up my arm. I cried out, and that sound only pushed her further into a frenzy. Stop acting like a victim. I'm not. You are. Her face hovered inches from mine, unfamiliar, distorted. And then she said the sentence that revealed everything. You should have never been born. There are moments when the world seems to pause, not gently, just long enough for you to realize you're standing at the edge of something irreversible. This was one of those moments. I stepped back instinctively, desperate for distance, and we were suddenly inches from Mum's decorative glass office door, frosted panels with a geometric design, supposedly reinforced, though the contractor had gotten it wrong. We wouldn't learn that until later. Natalie seized my other wrist, yanked me toward her, then shoved me with everything she had. Time seemed to fracture. I felt my feet leave the ground, felt the momentum rip the air from my lungs, felt the glass resist for a fraction of a second, just long enough for dread to bloom before it shattered completely. Sound dissolved into a pure white roar. The world spun. Shards sliced across my arms, my throat, my hair. Cold air rushed past as I fell through the broken frame, then crashed onto the hardwood floor of Mum's office. The pain was sharp, but brief. Everything faded fast, draining like someone slowly pulling a plug. Somewhere above me, Natalie screamed, "Oh my God! Oh my God! Ella! Ella! Get up! Get up!" Her voice cracked, but not from concern, from fear of consequences. Mum's voice joined hers, high and trembling. "Call someone! Hurry!" Dad kept repeating my name, each time quieter. I felt warm liquid spreading beneath me, seeping between the floorboards. My fingers tingled, then went numb. My chest struggled to rise. But what truly broke me wasn't the pain. It was hearing my sister say, "She made me angry. She always makes me angry. It wasn't my fault." The last sensation I remember was a strange weightlessness, as if my body were drifting away. Then nothing. The fall put me into a coma. People assume comas are silent. Mine wasn't. Darkness listens. And when people believe you can't hear them, they speak without filters. In the ICU, I drifted in and out, never fully conscious, never entirely gone. Voices reached me like echoes underwater. "Natalie, they need your statement again. It was an accident. That's not what the evidence shows." Evidence, my journal, my photographs. Micah must have come forward with everything. I heard Mum crying, genuinely, desperately, in a way I'd never heard before. "She's our daughter," she kept repeating. Dad's voice sounded hollow. "We should have stopped this. We should have seen—" "No," Natalie interrupted sharply. "You told me she was the problem. You always said she made things harder for me." Silence followed, thick and damning. A doctor spoke next, calm and clinical. "Ella suffered severe trauma, swelling around the brain, multiple fractures. A major artery was nearly severed. If your neighbor hadn't applied pressure immediately, she wouldn't have survived the ambulance ride." That neighbor was Micah's father, a paramedic, the only adult who had ever truly protected me. The days blurred together. I existed somewhere outside of time, voices looping, fading, returning. Sometimes I heard Micah reading aloud, assuring me the world outside was still waiting. Sometimes I heard nurses whispering about my case, remarking how rare it was for a sibling's violence to escalate this far. Sometimes I heard Natalie sobbing, not out of guilt, but fear for her own future. And then one sentence cut through everything, sharper than the glass that had torn me open. "She might never wake up." Maybe that's what stirred something buried deep in my mind. Maybe that's what ignited the part of me that refused to give up. Because one morning, weeks after I fell through that door, the darkness began to thin. A flicker, a pulse, a sliver of light. Slowly, through fog and pain and the distant beep of monitors, I surfaced, heavy, but alive. When I finally opened my eyes, everything had changed. The room felt too bright, too cold, buzzing with machines that sounded louder than my own breathing. My body wouldn't cooperate, but my mind, hazy and aching, began stitching together the fragments I'd absorbed in the dark. Mum stood in the corner, her shoulders trembling. Dad lingered near the door, as if unsure he had the right to be there. But the first face I truly saw was Micah's, asleep in a chair beside me, his head resting near my arm, his hand still loosely wrapped around mine, as if he'd been afraid to let go. When he woke and saw my eyes open, he didn't speak right away. He simply exhaled, a sound that broke halfway through. The doctors walked me through everything slowly, piece by piece. The swelling, the surgeries, the 3 weeks I'd lost to unconsciousness. They warned me healing would take time, that my memory might falter, that my body would resist simple movement for months. But none of that compared to learning what had happened while I was gone. Natalie had been charged. The evidence Micah had safeguarded for so long, my journal, the photos, the timeline, the pattern, became the foundation of the case. Teachers came forward. So did neighbours, even some of Natalie's former teammates. The truth spread everywhere, impossible to contain again. My parents, once so intent on protecting her image, now faced the consequences they'd helped create. They wanted to talk, to apologize, to explain themselves. But I realized healing wasn't about repairing them. It was about choosing myself. So when the social worker asked where I wanted to recover, I answered without hesitation. I want to stay with my aunt. And for the first time in my life, the decision was entirely my own. Moving in with my aunt felt like finally being able to breathe. Recovery was slow and often painful, but each day I felt a little more like myself and a little further removed from the girl who used to stay silent just to keep the peace. I'm studying art therapy now, working with teens who carry invisible scars. Justice didn't undo what happened to me, but it opened a door to something better. If you've ever had to rebuild yourself after being broken, share your story below and subscribe for what comes next.